Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tenitra Williams. I am your host and facilitator of Minding My Mental Health, where we want to bring awareness about mental health and help start conversations and dialogues to give people insight and understanding on how to better handle their mental health. Amen. All right. So I'm really excited. If you guys have watched this show before, you know what I want you to do. But if you are a first timer, let me tell you how we roll around here. If you're watching, I would like you to hashtag live and let me know where you're watching from. Also, if you are watching, I would love for you to share this video, tag your friends and your family. I'm actually going to do the same. I'm going to go ahead and share this to some groups that I am a part of. So give me one moment. And again, as you're coming in, please share the video, tag and hashtag live, and let me know where you are watching this video from. Okay, we're going to give people a few moments to get in here. And I'm actually going to tag a couple people to get people rolling. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Thursday. I know I am. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we are talking about how to handle disappointment, how to deal with disappointment, not just to see it and recognize it, but how to overcome disappointment. And so I know this is something that I feel like a lot of people can relate to because most of us have experienced some disappointment in our life. So, again, I think it's a topic that we can really all relate to because at some point we've had some disappointment. And oftentimes, what we don't realize is that disappointment, if it is not addressed, if it is not handled effectively, can actually lead into some further mental health issues. And so, again, we want to talk about that a bit more. If you're joining us, I see a couple people joining. Make sure that you not only hashtag live and let me know where you're watching from, tag some friends and family and share this video to your story, to your page, to groups that you are a part of, anything like that, that we can get those numbers up. Also, if you'll do me a favor and like the video, like this broadcast, I would appreciate that as well. So again, we're talking about how to handle and overcome disappointment. Most of us have had an experience in which we felt some level of disappointment. And in fact, this was brought up last night. I think I made the post, but it came from Rose was reading a devotional and it was about obedience. And at the end, she was basically saying, when we obey God, good things happen. And when we disobey God, bad things happen. And I didn't disagree with her that when we obey God, we're in the best place possible, right? In our obedience. But what I started to think about was when we obey God, sometimes we don't automatically get to this place where it looks like things are really good. And so their examples are, Daniel in the lion's den. He obeyed God, but literally ended up being in a den with lions. That doesn't feel like or doesn't sound like a good outcome. I'm trying to think of some other people. The 3 Hebrew boys, I think I put that in the status as well. The 3 Hebrew boys obeyed God, did not bow to the other gods or to the king at the time. And what happened? They were thrown into fire. And so sometimes what happens in the middle of, we know the end of those stories and we know how it worked out. But in the middle of those stories or in the middle of our life, sometimes it looks like we did the right thing and it did not turn out the way we wanted it to. And that can lead to some disappointments if you don't stay connected to God and stay connected to that word so that you actually get to see the end of it. There's a scripture that says love never fails. And sometimes I was thinking about that story of Joseph in the Bible, where he talks about where it's talking about he did these things and he was walking uprightly, but he still ended up in prison. He still ended up sold into slavery. That doesn't sound like love doesn't fail, right? But in the end, love did win and he was able to save his family. And so we see these moments where in the middle, we can be really, really disappointed even though we feel like we've done the right thing. Can anybody else relate to that? Feeling like you did something right, feeling like you followed a certain rule, you've been eating right. I don't know if anyone has ever felt like I've been eating right, I've been exercising, and the scale seems like it doesn't move, or your body seems like it's not making the transformation that you want. You can have some disappointments. Now, we know that there are disappointments on all types of levels, right? There's the disappointment of something small, like you went to the store for something and they were out and you didn't get that thing. That's some disappointment. But we can have some greater levels of disappointment as far as someone betraying us and what is being disappointed in that person or their response, us being disappointed in an outcome. Maybe someone passed away that you have been praying for and you felt really disappointed. All of those types of things, right? So disappointment can be a big thing. Again, if you're watching, go ahead and share this video with someone. Tag your friends and your family so that they can see how to learn to deal with and overcome disappointment. So today we're diving into disappointment and what it really is and how it affects our minds, our bodies, and most importantly, how to overcome disappointment. And we're going to be talking about this from a psychology or psychological perspective, as well as a biblical perspective, because I am a counselor, but I am also a Christian. And so I like to tie both of those things together because sometimes those worlds don't always come together in a succinct way. So let's talk about what disappointment is. Disappointment is our emotional response when our experience doesn't, or our experience, let me start over. Disappointment is an emotional response we experience when our reality doesn't match our expectation. So if you expected X and you got X, you don't get disappointed. But if you expected X and you got Y, then there is disappointment, right? And so it's when our reality doesn't match our expectation and it's less than or not at what we expected in a negative way, okay? It's not just sadness, but it also includes frustration, confusion, and grief. I don't think people understand the weight of disappointment. That grief can be really strong because you were expecting something and now you lost the thing that you were expecting, or you didn't receive the thing that you were expecting the way that you expected it. When disappointment hits and you don't process it, your body can respond in a couple of ways. Sometimes it will just shut down. You might feel numb, disconnected, or exhausted. Or you just kind of check out, like, I'm disappointed. You may have had some grief in your life, or you lost someone that you have been praying for. And so you just kind of check out. You don't necessarily go off on anybody. You don't all the way shut down, but you just kind of go through the motions of life. That can be some of the residual effects of disappointment. Oftentimes we go in the opposite direction and we become hyper alert. So we have racing thoughts, our tension in our body, trouble sleeping, always expecting the next bad thing to happen. Like, when is the other shoe about to drop? So again, these are things that happen when we have disappointment. And we're not talking that small disappointment, or I thought my grandma was going to give me $20 and she only gave me $10. Those disappointments we are usually able to shake off pretty quickly. But those deeper disappointments, or the constant disappointment, because sometimes you can have chronic disappointment over your life, that can have some major damage on your psychological being. So again, over time, we can stop dreaming. This isn't just in your head, okay? I need you to understand that when we're talking about this disappointment, it's not just in your head. Your nervous system is actually reacting to what it perceives as danger. And if you stay in that area or that space of chronic disappointment for too long, again, you may just shut down, or you always walk around on edge. That can spiral into anxiety, depression, some physical issues, like you can have ulcers because of the stress of always thinking something bad is going to happen. Or you, again, go into the disappointment from feeling like nothing good is ever going to happen. And so you start to just go into this depressed place because you feel hopeless. Okay. Again, sometimes you can let go of your goals and your dreams if you're in this chronic state of disappointment. You avoid taking risks. You may pull away from people. You might even pull away from God. Not because you don't care, but because you're trying to protect yourself from feeling that pain again. Most of us, and I've heard it a lot as a counselor, people say, well, I just don't expect good things, and that way I won't be disappointed, right? Well, you also don't experience a lot of joy in with that mindset. If I don't expect anything good, so I won't be disappointed. Yeah, you may avoid some level of disappointment, but you also don't experience joy. And ultimately, if you don't experience joy, you're also probably feeling disappointed because you want some joy in your life, right? And so I think that's important. So we talked a little bit about how disappointment can spiral, but I want to go into that a little bit more. If chronic disappointment is not addressed in the right way, again, it can lead to depression with you having thoughts like nothing ever works out for me. You can have some anxiety thinking, hey, I'm just always let down. It's never going to be my turn. It's never going to work out for me. So you get anxious, um, hopelessness. God just forgot about me. And I see this a lot with women, particularly single women who get really discouraged by their single journey. And they just feel like, it's just probably not going to happen. I'm too old. I'm too this. I'm too whatever. Right. And so it's really, really important that we don't get stuck in the disappointment. It's going to happen. Like at some point in life, you're going to experience some disappointment, but there are ways that we can handle it spiritually and psychologically to get us out of that place and to actually sometimes allow that disappointment to catapult us into something great. Cognitively, we can kind of get our thinking distorted when we start dealing with a lot of disappointment, and we can get into what we call all or nothing thinking, which is just it's either all good or it's all bad. And if you're dealing with disappointment, you tend to lean towards that sense of it's all bad. And so you just see bad everywhere. Someone can tell you a sweet story, and you find the negative, right? I often see when I talk about my marriage, I'll talk about how happy we are and all of that. And there, no doubt there will be somebody who says, oh, just wait, or that's just because it's not gonna last. Those negative things. Why? They are either trying to protect me from getting disappointed, or they have been so disappointed in their life that they don't believe that long-term happiness is a possibility, right? Sometimes people get into that catastrophizing, which is they go to the worst case scenario. If you've been disappointed a lot, you go there so you don't have to get excited about anything. You just go, well, the worst thing that could happen is over on this side. Personalizing it, taking everything personal, every disappointment, you see it as your fault or something's wrong with you. God doesn't love me, or God is punishing me, and all of that type of wrong thinking that can actually really cause us to get stuck in that disappointment. If this is resonating with anyone, you guys let me know. And if you have comments or questions, please put that in the chat so we can talk about it. But again, we said disappointment is not just the way we think, but it also can be stored in our bodies. So disappointment can signal to your nervous system you're not safe. So it says, we don't want to be disappointed again. Get on hyper alert. We don't want that feeling. That feeling didn't feel good to us. So our body is always trying to keep us safe. And because of that, we can get it again, be hyper vigilant, always looking for that bad thing, so that we feel like our body's trying to protect us. But what it causes is a lot of anxiety because it's always looking for the threat. It's always scanning the room for the threat. It can cause your body to shut down. It can cause your body to go into freeze mode, or you just kind of get numb. I see a lot of people, and they come into, come into my office. I'm virtual, but when I see them online, they'll say, I just don't feel a lot of anything. So they don't necessarily identify with feeling depressed. They just don't feel anything. They are numb. And when you start to dig, oftentimes I was disappointed when I was little. I was disappointed as I grew older. As an adult, I see this. And so again, you either go from this hyper alert state or this numb, I don't want to feel anything state. Neither of those places are where we want you to be, which is in the healthy place. Over time, your body can get stuck in survival mode and in that loop of just constant, it's not going to work out. So you just go in anxiety and depression. And so sometimes when we're thinking about disappointment, we kind of minimize the impact of disappointment. But I have seen people come in and they have had a disappointment. Maybe they had their hopes and dreams to do certain things, and then something happened in their life that shifted the trajectory of their life. For example, they had to go home and take care of a parent who was aging, or they had a child, or some abuse happened, an accident, some major thing happened in their life. And sometimes it's not always a major thing, but it could be a something that's shifted the course of their life in some way. And as a result, they never fully got over the fact that they feel like their dream will never happen because of that event, or that their life will never be good again because of that thing. And so it can be something that we have to address and not just minimize when we feel disappointment. I don't want us to get stuck in disappointment, but I want us to be able to acknowledge it so that we can heal from it and move forward. Okay. Even the Bible talks about what happens in disappointment. How do we know that? In Proverbs 13:12, it says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. What is hope? It is a desire for something in the future, that desire for something better, the desire for something good. Well, disappointment will rob you of that hope. That disappointment will say it's not going to happen. And so if you keep on thinking, or you keep getting disappointment, eventually that hope begins to dwindle down. And if it keeps getting pushed back, guess what? It says it can make the heart sick. The Bible is clear that we cannot just ignore disappointment and think that it is going to turn out well for us. We have to confront the disappointment so that we can actually experience the good things that God has in store for us. So let's look at how we start to regulate our nervous system after disappointment. Now, this is more so in the moment, right? If something happens and you realize, hey, I'm really disappointed. I actually talked about disappointment some right after the election, because I saw a lot of people who were sorely disappointed in the results of the election. I saw a lot of people who were just really just felt helpless. And so again, there are things that we can do when we get that devastating blow of whatever that disappointment is. There are things that we can do to kind of help us initially take a stand against disappointment kind of getting trapped into our bodies. And some of that is breath work, we call it. Basically, you are calming your nervous system, retriggering that part of your brain, the amygdala that's looking for that high alert. You're retraining that part to say, hey, calm. It's safe for you to calm down. It's safe for you not to be on alert right now. So the breathing, I do 4-7-8 breathing or 4-4-4 breathing. I'm going to show you very quickly just how to do it so you guys can have this in your toolbox as you're going forward. But some of the breath work, again, is 4-7-8. So you basically inhale for 4 seconds. You would hold that breath for 7 seconds, and you would exhale for 8 seconds. If you do the 4-4-4 or box breathing, you would do all that same sequence. Only the count is for inhale, hold it for 4 seconds, and exhale for 4 seconds. I'm going to do the 4-7-8 count, and then we'll continue. I just want you guys to have tools in your toolbox as we're going forward. Okay. So the inhale would be inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So that's how you do the count. To help you regulate your body. We're talking about regulating your nervous system, regulating your brain and your body so that you are in a calmer space. This is one that I like a lot, walking. Walking is one of the best ways to kind of recenter and reset your body. Gently stretching. I try to do stretching at nighttime. These are things that have been proven for me and for a lot of my clients to be really beneficial and effective. Stretching, certain stretches can release a lot of the emotional tension that we've held in our bodies, sometimes for years, sometimes just through that day. It can help you get out of that numb or that freeze state. It can help shift your perspective in a lot of different ways. So move your body. I actually made a video where I was walking and I put, taking care of our physical body is part of the internal healing work. And that is the truth. We have to recognize that that stress of the disappointment can get stuck into our bodies. We have to find ways to release that. And so stretching, walking, deep breathing, all of these are tools that you can use to release the disappointment and the stress from the disappointment from your body. You can also splash your face with cold water. Weighted blankets sometimes can give a sense of calm if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety issues coming. Getting out of your head again and getting your senses engaged. So going outside and touching, people will say touch grass. Well, that's a real thing. Getting outside and actually touching the grass, walking barefoot on the grass, letting yourself engage your senses. What are you smelling? What do you hear? What are you seeing? Getting your senses involved gets you out of your head and gets you reconnected to remind yourself, your body, that you are indeed safe. Okay. So those are some good things. What's our scriptural perspective from that? Psalms 46:10 says, be still and know. Be still and know what? That I am God. And be still and know that he's got it under control. This isn't a passive verse. It's not just saying, oh, don't worry about it. It's saying be intentional about calming yourself and also being willing to hear what God is saying, see what God is doing, and know that he has your back. Okay. So again, let me know if you guys have any questions or comments about any of this stuff. How do we do this from a cognitive perspective? Okay, so let's talk about how we start to shift our mindset from the thinking perspective. The first thing we have to do is start to look at the disappointment and go, where did this come from? What was I thinking that led to the disappointment? Where did this, what was the underlying belief of this disappointment? So disappointment usually comes from a deeper belief. So these deeper beliefs may be something like, I'm not good enough. Good things don't happen to me. I always get overlooked. I'm never picked. I'm all of those kind of negative self-talk beliefs. Those are oftentimes these core beliefs that people carry around with them, even if they don't verbalize them. There is something on the inside of them that may believe that they are not enough. They're too much for people. All of those types of things. The key is for you to identify that thought, but then you also want to challenge that thought. Okay. So you want to identify it, but then you want to challenge it. So let's use the example of someone who is applying for a new job and they don't get the job. So that does what? They feel the disappointment from not getting the job, but you have to go, what's the underlying belief that's really causing me to be devastated from this? So you didn't get the job. Your belief is, this means that I won't ever be successful. This means I won't be good enough, or I'm not good enough. This means that nobody wants me. I'm not fully accepted, or whatever that core belief is. And then your consequence comes because you go into the spiral of hopelessness. I'll never get a job. This is never going to work out for me. All of those types of things. So you want to be mindful of what you are thinking. When you feel disappointment, stop and recognize, hey, I feel disappointed, but why? Why do I feel disappointed? What is the underlying belief that I am carrying that is fueling this disappointment? Okay. According our cognitive behavioral therapy says, look for the lie. CBT teaches us to look for the false belief that we may be carrying. Is this belief true? Does this mean that, if I don't get this job, does this mean I'm not good enough? Well, no. This could mean a lot of things. So you start looking, you identify the lie, but then you also look for the truth to challenge that belief, right? So you look for the truth. Have I ever gotten a job? Okay, right. So that means that I do have some skills that are needed and whatever. Did I qualify for this job? Yes, I qualified for this job. How many people applied? It was 3,000 people. Okay, so I was not the only person that didn't get selected for this job. There were a lot of other people that didn't get selected. This isn't about me not being good enough. This may have just been a numbers game, right? And so you're able to walk out through that with a more balanced approach. So reframing, once you can challenge those lies, reframing helps. So it says, I've been chosen before. This situation, or I not getting this job, may have hurt my feelings, but it does not mean that my journey is over. This is not the only job in the world. There are other jobs that are maybe even a better fit for me. So, okay. So it's okay to feel disappointment, but no, but this no doesn't mean that all the doors are closed in my life. This no does not mean that every door is closed in my life. If this is helping you, go ahead and share this video, tag someone that may be facing some disappointment right now, or even reframing like, this is just a setback. This is not the end. I'm going to win in the end. The other thing is to write down your new belief. Like we just said, hey, just because I had a setback or just because I didn't get that job doesn't mean that I won't get an even better job. Just because that relationship ended doesn't mean that I won't ever get into a healthy relationship. Why is this important? Because you're able to stop doing the generalizing, which says, if it happened one time, it's going to happen forever. If I didn't get this job, I'm never getting a job. If this relationship didn't last, I'll be lonely forever. These are things, these are those core beliefs, or these are those thoughts that you have to challenge and catch and go, wait a minute, just because one relationship ended doesn't mean all of them. How do I know that? I start to look for the exceptions, right? You go, do I know anybody else in the world who had one relationship that didn't work out and then they got in another successful one? If that is true, that is possible for me. And so you start to challenge those erroneous thoughts by looking for the truth, looking for the exceptions to those cognitive distorted ways of thinking. So you want to look at what's your new belief. Just because this ended doesn't mean my journey is over. That's your new belief. You want to write it down. You want to speak it out loud. And you want to say that with conviction. You want to say that throughout your day. If there is a specific scripture that backs up what you're saying, you need to say, okay, according to this scripture, God hasn't forgotten me, so I'm not forgotten. If God is still with me and God is still on my side, that means that this battle is not over, right? You have to be strong and courageous enough to speak out that new belief. The thoughts that you repeat shape how you feel. That is so important. Go ahead and put that in the comments. The thoughts that I think shape how I feel. I'm going to read that again. The thoughts that I think shape how I feel. And watch this. How you feel shapes how you act. So when you learn to pause and challenge these automatic disappointing thoughts, you give yourself room to hope and move forward with clarity and with faith. So basically, what are you doing from a spiritual perspective? You are renewing your mind in that area. Romans 12, 1 and 2 tells us about transforming our minds. And it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? So renewing it with, this was an old way of thinking. This was a distorted way of thinking. But now I'm going to put a new way of thinking in place of that. I am going to renew my mind with the word of God. Reframing does not mean you're denying the circumstances. So reframing is not saying, I really did get the job. No, reframing says, maybe I didn't get that job, but God has something better for me. And if that is my job, they will come back and I will still end up getting that job, right? Reframing doesn't say, no, I got the job and you show up on Monday when they told you you didn't get the job. That is delusional and it can get you in trouble, right? So we want to make sure, unless God tells you to go back up there again, you stay at home if they told you didn't get the job. So you want to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And you want to practice spiritual discipline by saying, hey, that's the way I was thinking, which was causing those disappointing thoughts were causing me to have anxiety, hopelessness, depression. But I can reframe that. Okay. I was talking to someone recently and they were talking about a disappointment that they had in their family. And as a result of that disappointment, they basically have already decided that their 4th of July, which is not here yet, their 4th of July would be ruined. And I said, it doesn't have to be. You haven't reached the 4th of July yet. You can decide that you and your family, or you and some other parts of your family, you're going to do something very different. Right. So that may mean I'm not with the larger group of my family, but maybe me and my kids or me and my siblings or me and my whoever, me and my friends, even we're going to go to the lake and have a great time, or we're going to have some fireworks. So we're going to have movie day. We're going to create a new tradition. Sometimes we give people so much power over us and we forget that we do not have to wallow in disappointment. You do not have to stay in that place. You can say, yes, that happened. I didn't like it. I was disappointed by it. But what do I do now? Okay. So let's get into kind of how we do the healing part of disappointment through our faith. So we've talked about like some cognitive things that we can do. We've talked about some somatic things within our bodies that we can do to calm our bodies. But let's talk about how to use faith, because we all know I'm a faith girl, right? And we always want to bring the faith piece in, because I speak primarily to people of faith. Healing through faith. I want you guys to remember Hannah. Hannah had prayed to God for a child. Hannah prayed and Hannah prayed and Hannah prayed, and she didn't have a child. In fact, Hannah prayed and she cried so much. She was crying so hard during one prayer, they actually thought Hannah was drunk. Now, do you know how hard you are praying for people to look at you and think that you are drunk? Hannah was sorely disappointed that she didn't have this child. Yes, she had love from her spouse. Yes, she had talents and abilities, but what she wanted, she didn't have. And that's where that disappointment came. She was like, "Look, the husband was like, is my love not enough?" And she was like, kind of not really, because I really want this kid. Right. And so sometimes we get really focused on something we really want, and that disappointment can be really tough. Um, and so we see that Hannah had disappointment and she cried and she wept, but she continued to go to God, the person who could actually help her through that thing. Another example of someone who really dealt with disappointment was Naaman, or Naaman, depending on kind of how you've heard that pronounced. He was a military leader, respected, but he had leprosy. And so he went to the man of God to get healed from leprosy. And what he thought was going to happen was the man of God was going to recognize his status, like Naaman's status, and he was going to come out and, and do kind of perform almost a ceremonial act of grandeur of, hey, you are now healed in the name of the Lord. And it was going to be really this big moment. And it was, the lights from heaven were going to probably open up according to in his mind. But what the prophet told him was to go and to do something that wasn't glamorous. He told him to dip in a very dirty river, which again wasn't a glamorous instruction. Naaman got really disappointed. He was like, I don't want to do that. I wanted it a certain way. And that sometimes our thinking is so rigid that we set ourselves up for disappointment when our thinking is super rigid. This is the only way God can move. This is the only way it's going to happen, because you have a picture in your brain. And if it deviates from that picture, then you're disappointed. I'm telling you, we have to have an open mind, a flexible mindset that says just because it didn't happen that way doesn't mean that there are not a plethora of ways that God can still bring to pass his promises in my life. One of my favorite examples to share is when I had my daughter Brielle, I had to have a C-section. I went in with a very rigid idea of what I wanted my birthing story to look like. I was going to go in because I had a friend who didn't use epidural, and she was, I always say, like an Amazon, right? She was really strong, and she was like, oh, I breathed through it and this and this. I was like, yeah, that's how I'm going to do it. So I went in thinking I was going to go in and I was going to breathe through this process, and I was going to push that baby out, and we were going to have this beautiful moment of skin to skin. And I had this picture in my head pretty clear. We go in and everything's going according to plan. I don't get an epidural. The contractions are coming. They hurt. I breathe through them. Things are going well. I'm like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to go. I am dilating every however many centimeters, based on the time. All of these things were lining up. And then we got to a point where I stopped dilating. And I went, okay, well, didn't expect that, but let's just keep going. I go through contractions. They are getting harder. They are getting stronger. I am not dilating anymore. And so then I'm going through hours of hard contractions, no dilation. And so we go through this period, right? I'm going through all of this, and it actually starts getting smaller. So instead of me dilating bigger, it starts getting smaller. And then things start happening on the inside where they were saying, hey, we need to get that baby out because there's some things going on. They came in and they said, the doctor says we're going to have a C-section. Immediately I started crying because the disappointment plus all the hormones that were raging in my body, but the disappointment came in, and because it didn't match the story that I had in my head of this is the way I want this to go. I was like, I don't want a C-section. I want to have this baby vaginally. I want it to be this way. I wanted it to look this way. But for the health of my child, I knew I needed to do what I needed to do, right? And so I had to reframe. I had to stop and say, why did you come in this hospital today? To deliver your baby, to deliver her healthy, happy, and to leave out with a healthy child, with both of you leaving out in a healthy way. And if you get stuck on it being your way, you could jeopardize the health of your child. Which one is more important? You getting this picture in your head and then it jeopardizing something which could change everything, or you getting what you came here for. What was the goal when you came to get this child out of your body and both of y'all be healthy? Okay, let's do that. So I had the C-section. She is not less my baby. I did not have, right. So I was still able to have this child. She was healthy. The doctors called in, some stuff was going on the scan and all those different things. But the outcome was what we wanted. I was able to birth a healthy, right now, loud, happy 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old. That is powerful when we start to see, when we get stuck in a rigid way of thinking, we can almost start to make poor choices because we're trying to make our life fit a story or a narrative that we have created, that may not be what is actually the best in reality. Okay. So you have to be willing to say, I have to be flexible. And in order to get the outcome, if you go back to Naaman, you see he eventually, somebody had to have a tough conversation with him and say, hey, do you want to be healed or do you want a ceremony? Which one? And he said, well, I do want to be healed. Well, you better go and dip in the Jordan, right? Do you want to be healed or do you want the fanfare? And he was like, ultimately, I want to be healed. And so he followed those instructions and was able to get what he needed because he was willing to be flexible. Okay. So how do we bring our disappointments to God? So many times, especially in our Christian faith, what happens is we try to present as if we have it together all the way, even with God. So we have these masks of, I walk by faith, nothing ever shakes me. I'm never moved by fear. I'm never moved by my emotions. I do all, and we're doing all of these things, and that is wonderful. But they oftentimes allow or keep us from actually going to God with the truth so that he can help us. It actually keeps us from confronting the real issue because we're fronting. Okay. You cannot confront the thing that you're fronting about. So we have to let God take our whole self. We have to give it all to him, bring our whole heart to God. Like, hey, I was really disappointed in the outcome of that. That is not what I anticipated. That's not what I expected. Psalms 34:18 says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. God is not beating you up because you have emotions. God is not beating you up because you have emotions, but he wants to walk you through it so that your emotions can shift, right? We know that our emotions are fickle. He wants to give us a word that will anchor us so that our reality can change, our emotions can shift. God doesn't rebuke you because you're in pain. He will meet you in the middle of it. Put that in the comment. God will meet me in the middle of the pain. God will meet me in the middle of the pain. Because understand that hope is not just some fairy tale. Hope is actually a part of us walking this journey. Because when we stay connected to the hope and the faith that what God has said, we begin to recognize a shift in our emotions. Okay. Faith is not saying that I'll never be disappointed, but it's saying that I'm going to trust God through all of it. I'm going to trust God in the middle. And again, I remember being really disappointed after getting a divorce, or even after that, but even more so just recognizing that I was going to file for a divorce. That was like, oh, this is disappointing. This is not what I wanted. This was not the outcome I was anticipating, right? But then I said, God, I'm going to trust you through it all. And he restores. But how do we move forward? How do we overcome that? We just said you bring your whole heart to God. You keep the faith and the trust. But you also have to acknowledge that acceptance doesn't mean you approve or you're like happy about the disappointment, right? So you can accept the disappointment without making it your identity. I'm going to say that again. You can accept the disappointment without making it your identity. For example, if you have a friend that betrays you, you can go, oh man, I am so hurt that person betrayed me because I never expected it from that particular person or that particular group or whatever. You can acknowledge that and still say, but I'm not a victim, because the same way that God brought me that friendship, God can bring me, or that friendship was a part of my life. There are other people that will be out there that will be able to support me, that won't betray me. Right. And so you cannot allow that disappointment to become your whole identity. Then I think this is key. You have to go through and say, what's the lesson here? What am I supposed to be learning? What was I expecting to happen? Well, I expected her to treat me the way that I would have treated her. I didn't expect her to throw me under the bus, or I didn't expect her to do this or say this, or him to do whatever, right? What was I expecting? Oh, I was expecting somebody else to respond the way I would have responded. I'm expecting everyone to live according to my standards. That's not fair, because everyone is not me. And so you begin to do that. But also you have to look at your expectations and go, where did these expectations come from? Were these expectations based on God's word? Were these expectations rooted in truth? Were these expectations just something I came up with off the fly? So this example, my pastor uses this example a lot. And she'll say, if you go somewhere and you want me to pick you up, but you don't communicate that to me, you can stand outside and you can make faith declarations that I'm going to pick you up. But if we have not communicated, you may be disappointed, because I don't even know that you are expecting me to pick you up. So you can be standing there, bags packed, ready to go, saying, Nitra's about to come pick me up. But because we have not communicated, I did not give you my word that I was going to come pick you up. Well, then you are disappointed, but it was based on you coming up with something that was never communicated with you. If I say I'm going to pick you up to take you to class, you can stand outside. I say, I'm going to pick you up at 8. Then you have an expectation that I will be there. Sometimes we have placed an expectation onto people that they never agreed to. Sometimes we do the same thing with God. I see this a lot. Women will say, I'm going to get married this year. Did God tell you were going to get married this year? Is this based on a word? Is this based on anything like that from God? Or did you just arbitrarily pick a date? Girl, on February the 14th, I'm getting married on Valentine's Day next year. Are you dating anybody? Does he want to marry you? Like, all of these things are important. So what we're trying to do is, quote unquote, manifest things that we don't have a word on. And you have to have a word to base your expectation. And that's where a lot of disappointment comes, because you're basing your expectation on things that people didn't necessarily agree to. So you look and you start to go, let me see if I had some unrealistic or unspoken expectations that I can learn from, how I need to communicate, or how I need to adjust my expectations and put my expectations in the right place, which should be the Lord. How can I rewrite this? Meaning, I don't mean lie. I mean, how can I reframe or reshape the way I see this? It didn't work out for me, but that doesn't mean that God's plans have failed for me. That particular thing, that job didn't work out. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that I hear talk, and they will talk about the moments when they got fired from their corporate job. Like, and a lot of the ones that I'm talking about are actually doing amazing on their entrepreneurial journey. And so typically there was this moment of, I got fired and I had to decide, am I going to let this become my identity as the person who got let go wrongfully and I become the victim of the angry person? Or am I going to pivot and be willing to say, okay, that season is up, but I have a lot of skills from that career. How can I use those skills to, extend or create my own thing? How can I use the things that I learned from that job, that position, from that experience, and make myself and put myself in a better position, right? So you have to begin to say, how can I rewrite this? This can actually be the good part of my story that I start to tell. I remember when I got let go of my corporate job, but then this thing happened. So that was the catalyst for your change. If you can go in, we talked about this earlier, if your mindset can be that of which, where you're saying, okay, I see the disappointment. I'm allowing myself to acknowledge that this is not a fun place. It's maybe even a painful place to be in right now. But I also see that that's not the end. Allow yourself to begin to dream. Bring your imagination into it and allow God to paint a better, kind of more happy ending to that story. Begin to say, this is not the way this story ends. Not that you have to know exactly how it ends, but you can know this is not how it ends. And so I know that it's working for my good, even if I don't know all the details of that. Okay. So Jeremiah 29:11, people love to quote this scripture. It talks about, for I know the plans that I have for you. And it says plans to prosper you and not to harm you. So when you're in those situations, you go, well, I know God's plans are to prosper me. So if this is happening, God, I don't know how you're going to use this to prosper me, but I thank you that you are going to use this to prosper me. There were times in life where I did not know, like the story felt so disjointed. The story felt discouraging. I felt discouraged. Like all these things felt like they weren't working. And all I could say, because I didn't have a specific, this is what's going to happen. All I could say was, I know this is working for my good. That's the only thing I could stand on. That was I would stand on. I know this is working for my good. And that would begin to shift. Hey, that doesn't mean you don't cry when you're saying, I know it's working for my good. That doesn't mean you don't feel that disappointment and that hurt, but you begin to say, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I know you're doing something and it is good for me. Right. And so you begin to create that new narrative that this part of the story may be ugly, but I know this is working for my good. The other thing is you begin to create some anchors. And what do I mean by anchors? Anchors are those things to help you to get back to a more balanced perspective. Gratitude. Y'all know I'm huge on gratitude. Gratitude is a great anchor. God, I thank you that even though I didn't get selected for that job, I thank you that I still have the skills to get another job. I thank you that even though I didn't get that job, I think if there is a place out there for me. What is that? You're setting your mindset to say, this isn't my end. Use scripture, get in the word, find some scriptures that encourage you concerning that particular area of disappointment. Write out you some affirmations. Disappointment is real, but so is my resilience. That is an affirmation that you can use. This no is not rejection, but it can be God's protection or God's redirection. Okay. My emotions may be valid, but they don't have the final say. These are all things that you can begin to say when you feel like you're getting stuck in that disappointment. So what do I want you to do? I want you to say, hey, I acknowledge that there are some things that I've been disappointed with in life. And it's okay to say that. You don't have to, that doesn't diminish your faith because you can say, hey, I was really disappointed in the way that particular thing went. Maybe a friendship ended or a friendship isn't the way it used to be or whatever, right? You can say, I'm disappointed in the way that went down. However, this doesn't mean it's the end for me. So begin to just pray that God opens your heart to see new possibilities, that God begins to heal you from the disappointment, and touch and regulate your heart, your mind, all of those things so that you can see things through his perspective. So if you are stuck in the cycle, if you recognize yourself in any of this today, if you go, I feel like I'm kind of stuck in some disappointment, or anger that came from the disappointment or any of those things, and you feel like, hey, I think I may need to walk through this with someone, feel free to reach out to do some counseling, some coaching. If you are a woman who is single and you are dealing with the disappointment of still being single or disappointment from a breakup or a heartbreak or anything like that, I have the Wholeness Path coming up. I'm really, really excited about that. If you have been following my page, you've seen me post all about it. The Wholeness Path is a 6-month program designed for single Christian women. Anyone can come, but we will be coming from a Christian perspective. Christian single women who have been disappointed or who are single and they say, I don't know what's going on. I keep going into these cycles of making dating mistakes, or I've given up and I'm just really, I've kind of resigned to, I won't ever be married. Though, if you're feeling disappointment in that area in any way, and you say, I want to deal with that because I don't want that heaviness to follow me around. I want to get out of my own way so that I can prepare my heart for healthy, beautiful love. If you're on here and you go, well, I'm already married, or I'm not, that's not for me. Share that opportunity with someone that you know that is single and that could benefit. And I say, if you join, you're going to be able to benefit from it. I've had people who are actually married who joined the program and came out with wonderful testimonies. I've had people who were engaged and again came out with wonderful testimonies. So it's not just like I couldn't get anything from it. But if you know of someone who is single, that's who the target audience is. If you know someone who is single that could benefit, please share it. It is $97 a month. We meet twice a month, typically for about an hour and a half. And we delve into some things and we peel back layers and we do some real healing work about how, with God's help, of course, to help people to really be able to get themselves in position to heal that heart again so that they can be open to healthy love and they're not caught up in those cycles. So those are my announcements. Do you guys have any comments or questions? I do have a few moments of time before we end. So I want to make sure, does anyone have any comments or questions? Do me a favor, again, give some hearts, some fires, some all of those things to help with the analytics. Share this video, tag some friends and family that wasn't here, even though we're at the end, maybe they can go catch the replay. That will help a lot. So I don't see any comments, but I'm going to give people a few more minutes because I do know that there is usually a slight lag time. Thank you, Pastor Sean. So I appreciate you guys. Make sure that over the holiday, you guys enjoy yourself. If you're going to be celebrating the 4th of July, have fun with your friends and your family. Do what, fireworks, whatever it is that you are celebrating, go for that. Enjoy it. I will see you guys back here next Thursday, same time, 12 o'clock Central Standard Time, where we'll be talking about minding my mental health. So again, I appreciate you guys. Share this video with someone who could use some encouragement during their times of disappointment. Thank you and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.